The Great Depression arrives like a judgment day for modern reason. A system built on freedom, calculation, and self-correction suddenly collapses under its own weight. Welcome to another scene from the book, The History of Economics in 25 Scenes. Today I'll tell you about Keynes versus Hayek and the question that split the 20th century in two: should the economy be steered, or should it be left to find its own way? In the early 1930s, the proud engine of capitalism breaks down. Banks fail, currencies falter, millions are thrown out of work. The invisible hand, once trusted to guide society gently forward, now seems capable of strangling it. This is not just an economic crisis, it is an existential one. Can a system built on freedom survive when freedom produces collapse? Economists search for answers. Some call for patience and discipline. Others demand action, planning, rescue. And into this moment step two men who see the same disaster and draw opposite conclusions. John Maynard Keynes believes the problem is paralysis, fear freezing money, investment, and hope itself. If confidence has vanished, he argues, someone must restore it. The state must act. Friedrich August von Hayek sees a different danger. To him, the crisis reveals not a failure of markets, but the arrogance of believing that anyone can control something as complex as society. Intervention, he warns, risks turning rescue into domination. Their clash goes far beyond economics. It is a conflict between design and evolution, safety and liberty. And ever since, the modern world has lived inside their argument. Before 1929, economics speaks with the calm confidence of physics. Recessions are said to heal themselves. Imbalances are temporary. The market is treated as a natural machine of equilibrium. Leave it alone, and it will correct its own mistakes. Then the Great Depression arrives, and the machine seizes. Prices collapse. Factories fall silent. Millions of workers disappear into unemployment lines that stretch across Europe and America like open wounds. The invisible hand, once praised as gentle and wise, now looks paralyzed, or worse, indifferent. The elegant logic of classical liberalism breaks under panic. Supply and demand no longer dance together, they freeze. When everyone tries to save, no one spends. When no one spends, no one earns. The market's perfect circle turns inward and begins to suffocate itself. Fear, that most human of variables, enters the system and shatters the model. For the first time since Ricardo, the market loses both its moral authority and its mathematical credibility. The creed of automatic correction lies in ruins. Something must be done, but what? Into this silence step two radically different imaginations. John Maynard Keynes believes that reason, guided by collective action, can rebuild confidence and restart motion. If the market is frozen, the state must move. Friedrich Hayek sees a deeper danger. To him, the crisis proves not that markets fail, but that reason fails when it tries to command complexity. Intervention, he warns, risks destroying the fragile order it hopes to save. Between them begins more than a policy dispute. It is a struggle over freedom itself, whether it must be protected from intervention or by it. John Maynard Keynes walks into the ruins of the Depression not as a zealot, but as a craftsman. He believes ideas, if used well, can repair what markets alone cannot. Brilliant, ironic, and deeply impatient with orthodoxy, he refuses to treat economics as an exact science. For him, it is a moral art, guided by judgment, psychology, and a certain amount of courage. In the General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, published in 1936, Keynes dismantles the old faith in automatic equilibrium. Markets, he argues, do not always heal themselves. They can settle into something worse, a stable stagnation. Investment dries up, unemployment becomes normal, fear replaces optimism, and in that climate, No invisible force rushes in to save the day. Waiting for natural correction, he says, is like waiting for rain in a drought. His cure is deliberately paradoxical. When private confidence collapses, the state must move against the current. Government spending, even when funded by debt, can restart circulation. Public works, subsidies, direct investment. These put income back into people's hands, and with income comes confidence. In Keynes's view, money is not metal, it is trust, and trust is the most fragile currency of all. This is not just an economic shift, but a psychological one. Keynes brings uncertainty, emotion, and fear back into the equations. His ideas shape the New Deal, post-war reconstruction, and what later becomes known as the Golden Age of capitalism. Where others see equilibrium as natural, Keynes sees it as an achievement, fragile, temporary, and always in need of intelligent care. While Keynes looks for rescue through design, Friedrich Hayek sees danger in that very impulse. Watching governments grow confident in their ability to steer the economy, he recognizes what he believes to be the first step toward tyranny. Control, he warns, corrupts itself. Each intervention creates new distortions. Those distortions demand further control. And before anyone notices, freedom is buried under good intentions. For Hayek, prices are not mere statistics. They are signals. They carry the scattered knowledge of millions of people making local decisions in conditions no planner could ever fully grasp. A working market is, in his view, a conversation among strangers, a form of distributed intelligence. When the state fixes prices or directs resources, it silences that conversation and destroys the information that allows society to adapt. In The Road to Serfdom, published in 1944, Hayek makes his most unsettling claim. Even well-meaning economic control tends to slide into political coercion. Once the state decides what is efficient or fair, it soon decides who deserves what. Freedom dissolves, not through cruelty, but through administration. Hayek's answer is not chaos. It is humility. He insists that order can emerge without design, that coordination can arise from countless small errors correcting one another. Markets are untidy, cyclical, and imperfect, but they learn. Planning, by contrast, freezes life into obedience. To protect liberty, Hayek argues, society must accept turbulence. Uncertainty is the price of freedom. And progress, when it comes, is born not from control, but from experiment. The clash between Keynes and Hayek is never really about interest rates or budgets. It is a philosophical duel about what it means to be human. For Keynes, the state acts like the mind of society, a capacity for collective reason that can calm panic and restore direction when fear takes over. Humanity, in his view, is clever but impulsive, emotional, easily paralyzed by uncertainty. Left entirely to instinct, it can spiral into collapse. Guided with intelligence and care, it can recover and even flourish. Hayek sees that same intelligence as the danger. To him, human reason is narrow and scattered, always limited by ignorance. Trying to run an economy from the top is not wisdom, but arrogance. It forces society to fit the limits of a single plan. Real order, he argues, emerges only from interaction, from countless partial perspectives correcting one another over time. Imperfection is the cost of freedom, but also the condition of growth. Their disagreement reflects two deep civilizational archetypes: the engineer of balance versus the guardian of liberty. Keynes trusts enlightened coordination. Hayek trusts spontaneous adaptation. Both want stability, but they seek it by opposite paths, one through design, the other through restraint. Beneath the theory lies an older moral question. Is civilization built by planning the future, or by allowing it to unfold? The 20th century never settles the matter. Welfare states rise, free markets push back, and policy swings like a pendulum, as if reason and freedom can never quite live under the same roof, yet cannot survive apart either.
History never chooses between Keynes and Hayek.
It learns to live between them. The 20th century turns into a pendulum, swinging with every shock from design to spontaneity, from control to release. In the 1930s through to about the 1970s, the swing favors Keynes. Governments spend, rebuild, and reassure. The state becomes architect and nurse at once, building welfare systems, regulating finance, managing demand. It is the age of the New Deal, Bretton Woods, and social security. Prosperity through coordination. Then the motion reverses. From roughly the 1980s into the early 2000s, the pendulum moves toward Hayek. Deregulation replaces planning. Privatization replaces public provision. Markets are trusted again. Politicians quote Hayek like scripture. Central banks preach restraint. The invisible hand returns, now armed with spreadsheets, satellites, and global capital flows. And then comes 2008. The financial system fractures. Confidence evaporates, and suddenly Keynes walks back onto the stage. Governments inject money. Central banks create liquidity. Words like stimulus and quantitative easing slip into everyday speech. Once again, the market asks for rescue. And so it goes. Each generation replays the same dilemma in new language. How much freedom can stability tolerate? How much control can liberty survive? The pendulum never stops moving. Perhaps that is the lesson. Civilization itself may be a system in constant correction, not marching toward perfection, but wobbling toward balance, just long enough to lose it again. Keynes wants an economy that shields humanity from its own chaos. Hayek wants a humanity free enough to face that chaos without protection. Their disagreement endures because it reaches deeper than economics. It touches the oldest tension of civilization, between reason and liberty, between the urge to shape the world and the humility to let it unfold. Every generation inherits their argument and redraws the line. After each boom and after every collapse, society asks the same question in a new accent. Is order safer when it is designed, or when it is allowed to grow by itself? And every answer carries its own risk. Too much control suffocates life. Too little leaves it exposed. The truth, uncomfortable and elusive, sits nowhere near victory. It lives in motion. Civilization survives not by choosing one side forever, but by oscillating, by swinging between faith in planning and faith in emergence, between the comfort of structure and the grace of spontaneity. Keynes and Hayek are not rivals waiting for a final verdict. They are the two voices of a single, unfinished conversation. One speaks for protection, the other for freedom. Both are necessary, both are dangerous. And perhaps that is the real lesson. A society that ever stopped arguing between Keynes and Hayek would not become stable. It would become still. And stillness in history is rarely a sign of health. Here is the thought that closes this scene. Freedom and order are not enemies to be reconciled once and for all. They are tensions to be managed again and again. Keynes reminds us that markets can panic, freeze, and destroy lives if left alone. Hayek reminds us that power, once concentrated in the name of rescue, rarely gives itself back. Between them lies the permanent dilemma of modern civilization: how to act without pretending to know too much, and how to restrain without forgetting why freedom matters. And here is the provocation. If every crisis pushes us toward control, and every recovery pushes us back toward freedom, what does that say about how much we actually trust ourselves? Join me in the next scene, where the focus shifts again, away from policy and toward the human mind itself. We will enter a world of uncertainty, expectations, and irrational behavior, and meet the thinkers who asked a dangerous question. What if the economy does not fail because people are irrational, but because they are human?